Hi, I'm Larry Puckett, the DCC guy. Well, as you probably picked up from the title of this video, today we're going to take a look at the new Walthers large radius curved turnouts in HO code 83. So stick around for the video. Okay. Before we get started, I want to update you on a video I did about 3-4 weeks ago that dealt with interactions between the IP digital switch machines and the PSXX power manager circuit breakers. And just to remind you, Jason Edwards, one of the viewers here, was having problems with his system shutting down every time he would throw an IP digital switch machine. And he tried a number of different setting changes to the PSXX and checked all these wiring, did everything, couldn't find out anything that was causing the problem. I checked it out as I showed you in the video, and I had no problems at all. So finally, Jason contacted Larry Meyer at DCC Specialties, who designed the PSXX. And what Larry told him was, make sure, go back, power cycle your entire system after you do any programming changes. So that meant shutting the power off to his power supply, shutting the power off to his ESU cab control system, and to the entire layout. Once he did that, no problems at all. Everything now works fine. So it was simply a matter of powering everything down and then repowering it so that the programming took, I guess. Whatever, it now works fine. So be aware of that in the future and give it a try if you experience any interactions that cause your IP digitals or other switch machines to interact oddly with your PSXX, or for that matter, anything else that you're programming on your layout. Make sure that you try power cycling everything at least once after you do any programming and you get odd interactions. Okay, let's go ahead and get on with our look at the new Walthers curved large radius turnouts. Now, as I mentioned in the previous videos that I did on the Walthers double crossover and the Walthers straight turnouts, Walthers has been putting together a whole new line, rebuilding their entire line of turnouts and track. So these are the latest available from them. These are their large radius curved turnouts. Now, what do I mean by large radius? Well, we have a 24-inch radius curve and we have a 36-inch radius curve. Now, these are available in a few other different variations of 24, 28, 20 combinations. So take a look at the different radii that are available on the Walthers website, and you can get an idea of the different ones that are available. Now, I need it here on the Piedmont Southern, the 24-36 version, because my minimum radius on my main line is 36 inches. So if I'm going to take any turnouts off of the main line on a curve, I need that 36-inch radius in order to match what's on the layout already. So these are just perfect for me. I'm really happy that these got here at all. Let me show you why. This is what the box looked like. I mean, it was totally crunched. But fortunately, because these are in a great blister pack and protected from damage, they were able to make it through in spite of UPS's best efforts at tearing them apart. So let's go ahead, pop one out, and we'll take a look at them. Let's take right here. I've already opened one, so it would be easy. So you can see we've got a very nice turnout here. I'll show you, just to remind you, this is the new number 5 Walthers turnout straight, and it's very similar in many, many respects to this one. They followed pretty much the same production approach. So let's go through that and we'll take a look at it. So if we look here, you can see we have a frog here that is about, maybe 1.5 inches. Let me zoom in a little bit. So right here, we have a frog that is somewhere on the order of about 1.5 inches long. So you really do need to power this guy in order to allow your engines to get across here without stuttering or even stopping, because this would be a very long, unpowered frog if you do not provide power to it. The guardrails are set into the ties. So they have very nice small spike heads on them, hold them firmly in place. Let's do a quick check on the flangeways and make sure. So this is an HO scale NMRA track gauge. Goes through here, through the flangeways without any problems whatsoever. So you don't have to worry about your locomotives having problems making it through these. Now I'll point out the individual pieces of the frog itself are made up of individual sections of rails. This is not a cast item like you see on the microengineering turnouts and the Atlas turnouts, which use a cast bronze or brass or aluminum or some other type of pot metal cast frog in place. These are built up of individual rails. So if you run your finger across here, it is a very smooth transition. I don't have any problems at all. I'm not catching on anything but the end of this rail sticking out here. So if I run my finger through here, not a problem at all. Okay, so we don't have any issues here, no filing required at all to get everything to work right. Now, what about powering this guy? Well, right here on my left, your right, there is this little metal tab sticking out from this tie. Now, if you look under here, this tab runs through the casting to the frog itself. So all you need to do is solder a wire to this little tab, and that will allow you to provide power to the frog. So you can run that from any of the switch machines, such as a Tortoise switch machine or one of the IP Digitals or the Walthers switch machines themselves. All of those have built-in mechanisms for powering your frog and do not require a short circuit in order to operate, because every time you throw your points using that switch machine, it is going to automatically change the polarity or phase, really, of the frog, so you won't have to worry about any shorts. Somebody asked me in an email just the other day, what about powering these? Because what if you're using a manual method such as a caboose switch machine or some other device to power these? Well, that's a problem. You can use something like the Frog AR from DCC Specialties. You can use a frog juicer to do this. However, remember, as I said in a follow-up video a few months ago, anytime you use something like that, they depend on creating a short circuit. No matter what it is, how momentary it is, it still requires a short circuit to activate the internal circuitry on that device and correct the phase of power for your frog. Hit that little red subscribe button, and when the little bell comes up, click on it and click all. Thanks now. I also showed in a video on different manual methods for controlling turnout points. There are a couple of different devices. One of them, a Caboose Industries ground throw that has a switch built in for controlling your power to your frog. And I also showed an old method that I had that uses a slide switch machine, or a slide switch anyway, in order to control the polarity or the phase of your frog. So take a look back at those. I'll put a link to that video above me here, and we'll go ahead and take a look at the rest of this turnout. Now, the one thing I really want to point out is the fact that, like the other turnouts that I showed you, these have a continuous piece of rail here forming the closure rail and the point rails. You don't have a little connector, swivel, or whatever making that connection. You get this very nice, smooth transition through the turnout here. So it looks great, it looks very prototypical, and it's going to give you very good electrical contact through here, which is one problem that you run into with some of those other types of swivels and rail joiner type connectors that go between the closure rail and the point rails. You can end up with losing power to the point rail because that gets clogged with dirt or paint or with glue or something like that, and you lose your electrical conductivity. You don't have that problem with these. Also, because of the way that these are built, you don't have to worry about providing any type of connection to these closure rails themselves. And I'll show you that in just a second. But first I want to go ahead and take a look at the points. Now down here at the points, just like on the previous version, the straight turnouts, they have a little spring mechanism that holds the points in place. So if you want to, you can just use a pick to throw your points for you. And that way they'll stay in place without any problem. You don't have to worry about it. I personally prefer to use a switch machine, but I do know a lot of people that use manual methods for controlling the points on their model railroad, so these would fit right in there. Also very nice the fact that the cover plate, like I showed you in the previous video on the straight turnouts, is provided so you don't see those rivets that hold these guys in place. Covers it up very nicely. Also, there are 3 different holes provided for your throw rods. You can have one here, you can have one on this side, you can have one on this side of the throw bar. So, makes it very easy to set it up, whichever method that you want to use. And it's a nice place here to put some of those cast metal switch stands that you can get from Microengineering. Now, let's flip this over and take a look at the underside. Well, one thing I do want to point out right off, if you look here, they have these bonding jumpers that go between the outside rails, the stock rails, and the frog rails here. So they're powered as long as the outside rails on each side are powered. Power is provided through this jumper to the frog rail, and this jumper here from this side to this frog rail. So it gives you power to your frog rails themselves here. And all that requires is power being provided to these 2 outside stock rails. And if we look down at this side, you can see it's the same situation for the closure rail, point rail that I showed you a second ago. So those are powered by this bonding jumper that goes between the stock rail and the closure rail, the stock rail and the closure rail. So that you always have power provided to those, but you don't have to add the jumpers yourself, like I've shown how to do in previous videos on making your turnouts DCC friendly. So everything is powered through here. So how do you power that? Well, what they recommend, what Walthers recommends, is that you attach power here to these 2 rails at this point, down by the points. Now that can mean by simply attaching these 2 using rail joiners to hot rails at this end. So if you have rails that they are being connected to that have power applied to them already through feeders, then power will then be applied to these rails as a result of that electrical connection. And I highly recommend that if you use rail joiners here for that purpose, that you solder them so that you get a good solid electrical connection. So basically then, as long as you've got power applied to these 2 rails, you're going to get power through these bonding jumpers on the back to the other rails in the turnout itself. If you're one of those individuals that likes to use nails in order to hold your turnouts and track in place, what Walthers has done is, at a number of locations here on the back, there are these small little holes that are cast in. So there's one here, there's one here, there's 2 here, there's 2 here, and there's a couple right here. And what those are pilot holes. So what you can do is take a drill and drill holes through here just large enough for your spikes. So that gives you the option of using spikes, or if you don't want to use them, you don't have the unsightly holes on the tops of your ties. So they've provided just about everything you can think of to make these things easy to use and DCC friendly. Now, we'll point out a couple of things to remind you of. Here on the end, these ties here will get in the way of using rail joiners. So they do recommend that you cut off these last 2 ties in order to use your rail joiners. Now, if you're not going to use a rail joiner on these ends, you could leave them there, not a problem. But if you're going to put a rail joiner on here, cut that tie off, and then they also sell wooden ties that you can use to put in place once you have done the rail joiner. So one thing you can do, though, is save these plastic ties once you cut them off, and then use an X-Acto knife to carve off the tie plates and the spike heads, and then you can just slide these back under. So they look just like they did before you had to remove them. As with the double crossover and the straight turnouts, they provide excellent set of instructions for you. They show you how to make the connections from a Walthers turnout machine to provide power to the turnout as well as to the frog itself and automatically correct that every time that you throw the points. I can't think of a single thing that I would add to this, to be honest with you. They provide everything that you can think of as far as the instructions go in here so that you can install these without any fear that you're going to mess anything up and have an unreliable turnout. So once again, these are curved Code 83 nickel silver HO scale turnouts with a 24 and a 36-inch radius curve built in. And as I said, they have a number of other versions of these with different combinations of curved radii. So take a look again at the Walthers.com website, do a search for the Walthers turnouts, and take a look at all of the different ones that they do have available for you. Well, that's a wrap for today's video. I hope you enjoyed our look today at the new Walthers large radius curve turnout. And these are something that I'm going to be using here at a couple of places on the Piedmont Southern. I already have them picked out for it. I know exactly where they're going to be. So we'll be installing these in a future video here on the layout. So keep an eye out for the follow-up video that will be the installation of these large radius curved turnouts from Walthers. And I checked on their website and everything is in stock right now. So they must have just gotten a big shipment in from China. So take a look at the Walthers online catalog and you'll be able to see what's available there for you. In the meantime, have a great weekend, have a great week, and I'll see you here next week with another video from the DCC Guide. Bye now.